guys. Anthony and Kate here.
Hey, good evening.
Episode
Sorry.
16.
Why don't you do that? Oh, I didn't know you were going to pause for me. I thought you were pausing.
We always do that.
I'm not going to do it. Okay. I'm going to leave this in.
Okay.
Okay, go. I'm serious now. Wait.
Hi, everyone. Anthony
Hi.
and Kate are here today.
Okay, try one more time.
No. Today we're going to talk about water.
We're going to flow.
But before we do that, Kate's going to tell us about the sky tonight.
Okay.
We were in and out and sounding like a robot and stuff.
Oh, man. I wonder if we're going to have a problem. Okay. Well, let's do this. Let's just start over.
Okay.
And I won't be weird. I promise.
Hi, everyone. Anthony and Kate are here tonight, and we're going to tell you about the element of water through the 3 zodiac signs. But first, Kate is going to tell us about the sky tonight.
I'm sorry, we tried to do this 3 times. We're having a hard time getting going this evening. Okay, hey, welcome. Thanks for joining us. This is All Things Esoteric Podcast. I don't think you announced us. It's episode 16. Did you announce what episode we're doing? I don't know if you did.
Nah, they already clicked on it. They know.
It's water.
They read it. Hi, everyone. It's All Things Esoteric, episode 16. Anthony and Kate are here.
Hey, good evening to all.
Today we're going to talk to you guys about water, specifically through the 3 zodiac signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. But first, Kate is going to tell us about the sky tonight.
All right. Well, welcome. We appreciate you joining us, and we just have to say Anthony and I have tried to do this podcast. Is this the 3rd attempt? Trying to
we should have some of the beginning attempts. We'll put that in the beginning.
Yeah, it was hilarious. It was just, I don't know. Well, here's why. We figured out why, and it really was quite full moon in Virgo at 3:20 in the morning today, very, very early in the morning. So we were trying to do a podcast going into this full moon energy, and it was heavy. The moon out here was just absolutely huge. And I kept wanting to go outside and feeling this pull, and I went out there before we got on the podcast, and then when I got on the podcast, I just got all, I don't know, moon madness, magic, giddy, like I just couldn't stop laughing. Anyway, yeah, finally we're here today. We decided, we could do it today. Now we're past the full moon. We're already into Libra moon.
But your internet got knocked out was the point also.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. You're right. The internet got knocked out, and I couldn't connect, so we ended up just talking under that full moon for about an hour, hoping it would come back on, but it never did. So things just were not working, and we just flow with that because we know that there's a reason for everything. So we're hoping to talk about water tonight. Before that, let's go ahead and get into the sky chart. I want to just bring a few things to our attention as I'm looking at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, New York, March 18th, 2022. We have a Virgo ascendant after coming out of a super strong Virgo full moon. And if you don't know what those themes were, really quickly, you can go back and look, but we'll be in those energies for 2 weeks till we see that new moon, and it's asking us to release. What are we to release? Well, Virgo is an earth expression sign, and it is mutable, which means it's able to move. It's able to change its form. It's able to not be so rigid and not be so impetuous. It has more balance than, I would say, cardinal and even fixed, because fixed can go in on itself. Mutable directions of signs really have advantages there that I'm not going to go into, but it's quite fascinating. We need them. We need the people that are flexible and movable and moldable to help us out. So Virgo is the 6th house, and this is daily practical activities, goal setting, This is where health and nutrition, what we eat, what we do every single day with our bodies. So therefore the healer comes in very, very strongly with Virgo. And Virgo's planet is Mercury. We've talked about this before with Mercury ruling Gemini as well. So immediately that tells us we're going to have a mental focus. And Virgo can be a little bit hard on herself. It's a feminine energy. It goes in. And so this moon and these energies are really asking for us to put some structures, some daily goal setting and organization around our healing and our health. That's the main theme. It's about releasing. In order to do that, you also have to forgive. And to do that, you have to have compassion. And to do that, you have to be connected to that which is compassion, which I find sometimes these higher vibrating characteristics, I guess you could call them. The Bible calls them the fruits of the Spirit kind of thing. And those are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, meekness, self-control. These are the things that we could create within us, but I've often found that those types of attributes come to me from outside of myself, from above. This is me. I've got Neptune on my ascendant, so I tend to be very connected to that above in the other. So I think that Virgo is asking us to be a little easy on ourselves here and to go out and receive the compassion for the self, because I know you can talk about your Virgo Mercury. I know that you've experienced this. They can really be hard on themselves. Super, super, super hard on themselves. And it creates anxieties. And there's overanalyzing that can take place with Virgos. And they can overcomplicate things. And because they want detail and because they want form, which is earth, they want practical management of form and earth, and they want to put it down on earth, and they want to see it, they can really be fastidious about going in and looking into detail. So this gives them the critical mind that we need, but it can sometimes be too much. So the caution here with this full moon and these energies we're in is, make a plan and don't have it be such an exhausting list that you're grueling over it and you never get anything done. You don't even move out on it. Make it simple. Keep it simple, and don't worry about being perfect. Allow yourself to make mistakes. Know that mistakes, if that's really what you want to call them, I don't see them as that. I see them as learning opportunities. Know that those are just times to know what didn't work for you, and don't do it again. Be like, okay, well, that kind of had a bad outcome. So you learn and you don't do it again. So I just wanted to touch base on the Virgo full moon energies, because that was really a big deal in the last 3 or 4 days that we've had going into this podcast, and the energy's just out there. Also, we know there's a lot going on with the war, and I just encourage you guys, stay positive. Truly, as we go into water here, you're going to see that our vibration matters greatly, and that we have some power innately within us that perhaps we weren't so aware of until we kind of pull the curtain back a little bit and take a look at water. Ironically, tonight we have that North Node in Taurus up near Gemini again. So the last podcast we did, it was in the same spot, and we had very active communication about things of the North Node theme in Taurus, which would be our security. In water, the water element is very much tied to our securities. Even though Taurus is run by Venus in the second house, it still has to do with the things that we love. And the things that we love have emotion tied to them. So we're going to be able to come across this evening in a way talking about water that's going to be very down to earth and practical. Second house, hopefully give some resources and hopefully broaden and expand your knowledge and knowing how important water is, not only within esoteric and occultic circles, things that are hidden, things that are not seen, the magic of the past, but also day-to-day Virgo, really practical application, and that's where I'm going to dive in here quick. A little bit of a background on water. If we look at our universe in the way in which it's structured, we find water to be vital for our existence and survival. The surface of the earth is covered by 71% water. The oceans hold about 96.5% of all the Earth's water. Water also exists in air as water vapor, in rivers, lakes, ice caps, glaciers, within Earth's ground and soil, and in aquifers. The human system shuts down very quickly if water is not maintained. The human body is also approximately 70% water. The human brain is also approximately 3/4 water. So something out of a book called Anatomy 101. It's a little crash course that I have book on the human systems. I want to read something out of this book by Kevin Langford, PhD. This is page 26. And I think it lays a really good groundwork about just how important of the elements, not to elevate water, but to say that water really is life. And without it, we can't do a lot of the other magic that we need to do. Water is the beginning, I think, as far as our intentions, because it's our very vibration, and how we vibrate matters. So important inorganic compounds. While much of the focus in the study of anatomy is on the structure, function, and metabolism of organic molecules containing carbon, some inorganic compounds are essential for human existence and for life in general. One way to think of the difference between organic and inorganic molecules, other than organic molecules being carbon-based, is that organic molecules are generally synthesized by living organisms, whereas inorganic molecules are not. They're usually produced by other means, such as geologic processes. While most life, on the planet is carbon-based, water, which is not carbon-based, is a compound without which life would not be possible. The human body, and he goes into talking about it being 65 to 70%. He's got 50 and 65. I've seen it as high as 70. This water exists within your cells, about 2/3 of your water content. So just think about this now, and I don't think we do, and I think we should. Living within each cell, which is what you are made up of, trillions of cells. That cell is 2/3 water. So you are a vibrating human system. Constantly. You are vibrating, whether you acknowledge it or not. You have an aura about you.
Well, scientifically,
Did you want to
I would say, scientifically, everything is vibrating unless you're at 0 degrees Kelvin. You see, temperature itself is a measurement of how fast molecules are vibrating. Like, that's why chemical reactions go faster when the temperature goes up. That's why you store things in the fridge, to slow down those chemical reactions of decay. So, mainstream physical science will tell you everything is vibrating.
Fabulous. Thank you for bringing that in. This water exists within your cells, about 2/3 of your water content, with the remainder outside of the cells in your tissues or bloodstream. Your brain is about 85% water, while your bones are about 10% water. I misspoke. I said 70. So your brain is 85% water. Think about that. Water is the universal solvent because it is composed of polar molecules. That is, molecules that contain a charge, that are capable of ionizing many molecules. A solvent is used to form a solution when another substance is dissolved in it. A universal solvent is one that can dissolve a wide range of substances. Lemonade, for example, Lemonade is an example of a solution. So is saline, which is water in which NaCl has been dissolved. Both of these solutions use water as a solvent, and I apologize, I don't know what NaCl is.
That's just common table salt.
Okay. Water in the human body is used as a solvent for elements such as chloride, proteins, and other molecules also use water as a solvent. So water is also directly important for many processes within your human system.
So not just many processes, like literally every single process nearly in your body, is all the chemical reactions that take place in your body are aqueous, meaning in water. Like none of the chemical reactions, nearly none of the chemical reactions that happen in your body could happen without water.
There you go. And just look that up if, we're a door, test it. I would, but go look it up. I'm sure it's correct. So water is the basis upon which many biological processes take place. He continues. He talks about the connection between water pressure, kidneys, salt, and how that works in our system, and how inflammation begins. And when we get inflammation, our body is not able to process waste, and all kinds of things begin to happen. The body uses water for many functions, including regulating body temperature, lubricating joints and moistening tissues, flushing waste, preventing constipation, and reducing demand on the kidneys. That is so huge. I felt like I was supposed to say this when I read that, is please encourage people to drink water, because if you have really bad issues with the bowels, as far as that issue of constipation, just coming from a naturopathic side, when that all gets blocked up, we have all other problems that start to ensue, and it really messes with your chakras in the way that the body and the energetic, all of the meridian flow, all of it can flow. So water will keep you regular. It's probably one of the most important pieces of advice. I say sleep and water are two of the most important things that you could tell someone. If you can do that with consistency, it'll change your life. Aiding in the transport of materials and gases in the bloodstream, and dissolving molecules such as minerals so the body can use them. So I just wanted to drop that and just say that it's super important to understand why water is needed for the human system and for our world, and what's happening when we pollute our waters and how that's affecting all the rest of the planet. So I'm all for clean waters. I'm all for digging for water and wells and having people have water. I'm very attracted to water. I'm a water sign, so I love the water. I swim in the water. I understand the need for water. That's the other thing, is swimming in water. I find it highly therapeutic. Do you swim, Anthony?
Not regularly, but I can swim, yes.
Swimming is really, really good for you. Yeah, it's really, really good for you in a number of ways. And there's a guy who developed a machine called the Chi machine that mimicked the goldfish and the way that it moved in a number 8 formation. And it's a long story short, but an oxygenated body is a healthy body. Oxygenated body is a healthy body. So the symbol for water is an upside down triangle. Direction of water is west. And water represents the feeling, sensing aspect of us in the non-physical world when we start going into esoteric circles. The water element with the non-physical world is vital to understand for harmonious existence. As humans, we are designed and created to respond to vibration, both inner and outer. And this is why we react to music the way we do, in conversations and energies in rooms. And it's a collection of tones and notes placed into an order and arranged that either create harmony or chaos. And the inner vibrations impact our human systems in extraordinary ways that are tied directly to our overall state of mind and health. And there's this guy that I mentioned last week, wrapping up here, and it was that Japanese pioneer. And I mentioned the whole water thing and how he froze water, and different tones were presented while it was freezing, and it created different structures. His name is Masaru Emoto, and he spent 20 years collecting a wide variety of water samples, which he would then freeze and observe under a microscope to see the crystals that formed. and he exposed them, some to words and some to tones. And so you can go online. His name is Masaruemoto, and he is passed, and he was a Cancer sign. He was the Cancer sun at 28 degrees. Very, very full Cancer, very mature, pretty much done with Cancer at 28 degrees, getting ready to go into the next sign, which is Leo. So something I found really interesting about this gentleman, well, let me just talk about his work really quick. So he would take pictures. An example of this would be he would speak the word love, freezing, and it would form the most beautiful ice crystals. And depending where the water was from, it would form different ice crystals of love, which was really fascinating to me. Different parts of the country he did this, devoted his life to it. Ironically, in his natal chart, he has Neptune, the most watery planet we have within the astrological system. And it was on his midheaven, sitting up there. Well, excuse me, it was in the 9th house, cusp, sitting up there just on a very strong angle. Not one of the 4 main angles, but it's on a cusp. And that's a potent place. And it was opposite the moon in the 3rd house, in the Aries moon. So the moon and Neptune play very heavily into the water itself. And sure enough, this guy had a chart with Neptune opposite moon and Neptune up on the top. So he was fascinated with water. He devoted his life to water. There's a lot more that can be said about his chart, but go check it out and study it for a few minutes, and you'll see his passion there. He had Mars in the 4th house. There was a lot of passion there for him in energy to talk about these watery themes, and the 4th house is a water house. What else did I want to say here before I hand it over to you? I think, I wrote this down just kind of auto-writing for a moment when I was in meditation about water. And I got this, and I said, our vibrations matter. The personal power we have been given through our vibration is quite profound. And if we want to vibrate with clarity, we want our lives to express clarity versus confusion. This is where we get, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. Have you heard this?
Yes.
Okay. So it's, if you keep vibrating that way, and your vibration is created by what you put around you and what you expose yourself to, because, vibration does penetrate. If you don't think different thoughts, you're not going to have a different outcome. And it sounds so simple, but we have an epidemic to the date. Like as of today, we have had more drug overdoses than we have had in years. And we already had an opioid epidemic. So we've got some seriously challenging opportunities with some vibrations out there. And it's like the mind isn't able to function without a medication, without something monitoring it. And I understand there's a place for that, but I think that we need to learn how to take back our power. And I think that we need to understand Hippocrates, the very father of medicine, said, natural forces within you are the true healers of disease. And we have within us this powerful and profound power through our vibration. And if we manage it, not in an anal way, like in a heavy way, but if we discipline ourselves and manage it, and that's what magic is, really. Because when you take the time to do things in a structural way, and you learn, and then you put them together, magic happens.
Mm.
But it isn't until you hone the craft, study the book, get the materials, spend time in the vibration of it, learn your craft, and then you can begin to take the power of that vibration and use it. But if you spend your time never in the vibration of your craft and never around the tools of your craft and not spending time alone with your craft and with others. Oh, you must have others. But what I'm saying is, if you don't monitor your vibration, it will monitor you. It will take you where you're vibrating. And it brings us back to this, as above, so below, as within, so without. And understanding that we can connect to something that's higher outside of ourselves, that is benevolent and helpful and full of power and guidance. We can. It's up to us. So I think something's important to mention here when we get into water is individual DNA does matter. I believe there are things, I look at charts and I see certain diseases being carried through, or a propensity. And I'm wondering if it isn't more ancestral vibration, where, yeah, he was sick and so was he and so was he. And we just keep these vibrations and these expectations of it almost. But if we change our thoughts and we place them, everything's working out for me. I know I'm going to get that job I need. I just need to keep looking and keep going forward. I need to do my part. I need to put momentum and vibrate and connect and get myself buzzing like a bee before I can actually go get that honey. You know, I mean, really, it's that simple. So with that, kind of got on a grandstand. Sorry, but hey, water is important and our vibration is crucial, and we need to own it and stop making excuses, because there's power here to be had if we would take the time to tap in. So with that, I will hand it over to you.
So, the tarot card representing water is the Hangman. Hebrew letter attributed is Mem, water. So in the Thoth, Golden Dawn, traditional Rider-Waite, Hangman is water. And if you look into its meaning, it is very water. And this is a good example of, and we've talked a few times about the progression of the Aeons, before the Aeon of Isis, the Aeon of Osiris, and the Aeon of Horus. And this is a good example of how these are used as lenses and how the perception of a card can change throughout these periods. So this is from Lon Milo Duquette's Understanding Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot. First, observe that the arms and legs of our crucified hero make the figure of a cross surmounting a triangle. Crowley tells us that this symbolizes the descent of the light into the darkness in order to redeem it. It is nothing less than the cosmic sacrifice that creates, sustains, and destroys the universe. Our perception of how we are part of this grand sacrifice has evolved over the aeons. The sacrifice meant one thing to our ancestors in the Aeon of Isis, another thing in the Aeon of Osiris, and now, as we shall see, means something altogether different in the present Aeon of Horus. Crowley identifies the Aeon of Isis with the element of water. This was an age when it was universally perceived that human life came from woman alone. The sacrifice was made by the woman on the altar of her own body, and the hangman was the unborn baby who floated upside down in the water of the womb just prior to birth. The Aeon of Osiris is identified with the element air, which is sympathetic to both water and fire. Therefore, in the Aeon of Osiris, the sacrifice was one of compromise. This was the age of the dying god, when a guy just couldn't be a real savior unless he first came out of the water, baptized, etc., and then compromised his own body by allowing himself to be tortured, murdered, then hung or nailed to a tree to redeem the lives of his people. A couple of thousand years ago, this selfless gesture was a big step forward in spiritual politeness. As a matter of fact, for the Aeon of Osiris, it became the supreme formula of the adeptship expressed by Inri Iao, or INRI/IAO. Pretty sure that's how you say that. The Aeon of Horus is identified with the element fire, represented by the Hebrew mother letter Shin and the Aeon trump. In this Aeon of Horus, the water of the hangman and the fire of the Aeon don't get along at all. In this Aeon, Crowley warns, the whole idea of sacrifice is a misconception of nature. The gesture of sacrificial suicide is not only obsolete, it is downright counterproductive. And this is quoting Crowley from the Book of Thoth within this quote now. but now under a fiery lord of the Aeon, the watery element, so as far as below the abyss, is definitely a hostile, unless the opposition is the right opposition implied in marriage. Back to Duquette, the marriage he's talking about is the annihilation of the self in the beloved. This is symbolized in the card by the Ankh, the union of the rose and cross of the male and female. It is the devotional ecstasy that dissolves all sense of separateness that I wrote about in chapter 11. This marriage, as mystics and saints of every age and culture have tried to tell us, is a supreme sacrifice. The hangman of the Thoth Tarot still symbolizes the descent of the light into darkness in order to redeem it, but the word redeem no longer implies an existing debt that needs to be paid. Instead, redemption in the Aeon of Horus is the noble duty of the enlightened to bring the enlightenment to the unenlightened. And that kind of makes sense to me in a way, because the Aeon of Isis and the Aeon of Osiris, that's essentially the age of the mother and the age of the father. It makes sense in those archetypes because, the parents want to do all the sacrificing. They don't want their child, the Aeon of Horus, to do any sacrificing. They just want them to reap the rewards of, the parents' sacrifice. So that kind of makes sense in that metaphorical way.
Yeah, I like the way it started out. It reminded me of shadow work, going down in. And really...
Oh, yeah, very much.
Yeah, so. When you look at Jung's, his understanding of the shadow and the archetype, the archetypes themselves and how the shadow appears and all of that, it's really worth looking into. But the 12th house is represented by Neptune in astrology, with Pisces, which we'll be getting into later. But it's definitely not an easy house. And it can be a house where we repress things and things that are so deep down that we don't see them. It is known as the house of hospitals and asylums and jails and prisons, places where you're alone and retreating from the world. Houses 1 through 11 are all about our karma being played out and figuring it out and making our way around the wheel. We get to house 12. This is our service to humanity, our sacrifices. So it makes sense. It all ties in. I like the way that he did it.
Yes, and keep this idea of, redemption from the darkness. It's all very abyss. Remember, to our Doth episode, it brought in the metaphor of the prison. And so keep all this in mind, the abyss, Pisces, when we get to the Pisces tarot card, because it will come into play then further.
Water in astrology is feminine. And it's yin energies and covers the emotional mind plane. Have you ever heard of emotional intelligence?
Oh,
yes. That's where we get this. And I tell you what, when I would look, I did some hiring and things like that of managers for banks that I worked at as a recruiting manager. And I wouldn't look so much, this is serious, for talent, pure raw talent, as I looked for attitude. Because if you have a really good attitude, then you can be shaped and you can be molded. And water will take on any shape. So it's interesting how that works. This is our feelings when we start talking about water in astrology and tarot. We have the 3 water signs. Of course, you said Cancer, cardinal water. Her mantra is, I feel. She runs the 4th house of home, mother, nurturing, and it is the most sensitive point in your chart. The I am, the Umancole, I think I'm saying that right, which means innermost in Latin. Ruling planet of Cancer is the moon. So she's feminine, receptive sign, very ambitious with her water. These are people who are born from June 21st to July 21st. I was born July 19th, so I feel very closely attached to the sun in Cancer. It definitely makes up my soul. There's no doubt about it. Anybody who has a Cancer ascendant in the first house, or in the fourth, or on the seventh, or on the midheaven, one of those 4 angles, if you have the moon there, you definitely are going to be strongly attached to the Cancer energies that came in with that sign. The 4th house is a cardinal angled house, like I said, and it is a powerful house because it acts on the material level and plays strongly into the personal self and its affairs. So I think the water signs, and specifically Cancers here, they can get a bad rap in our society. And culture doesn't really like to talk too much about feelings. And the 4th house is the feeling house. It's our roots and our heritage, our family, our psychological foundations, our subconscious patterns are created in the 4th house. What we do with our feelings, if our feelings are allowed to be expressed, or if they're shut down, if there's been trauma there, super, super important to look at that. And is it impacting your expression on subconscious levels? And this is where vibrating and meditation and doing mantras and listening to certain sound therapy and certain measurements of sound can really heal you in incredible ways. And I don't want to go into this, but at some point we should talk about sound healing and what was going on over in Egypt and what that was all about, because there's a whole bunch of history we've not been taught about how they heal with sound, and they move objects with sounds as well. I think if trauma is really difficult to be healed here, if our vibration is set in a certain way, because what I have found is within the body, as I've studied the chakras, is we have flow. We have channels that the energy goes through. And you can see it, you can study it, and many, many, many traditions cover the energetic, the chi, the internal energy of the human system, the meridians, the chakras, the energy wheel centers, and they all talk about being able to manage and balance and center our centers within us. And they cover 7 main areas. There are many chakras besides the main 7, but the main 7 are most crucial. Every astrological sign is assigned to a chakra. So it's important to learn what your main chakra is, because chances are that's where your energy may be off. Your vibration may need to be adjusted. So it's really important to look at those. Did you have anything that you wanted to share on astrology before going into Cancer?
Yes, I have a passage from Your Place in the Sun, officially by Evangeline Adams. It says, in the moral as in the physical world, there is an extreme contrast between the active and passive types presented by Cancer. It will be simplest to describe them separately, leaving the question of modified or mixed type to be adjusted to each particular case by the astrologer. With request to the active type of Cancer, we shall not forget that it is water, but we must not think of water as passive, easily molded, incapable of offering resistance, quiet and reflective, that this is rather the type of water represented by Pisces, or the passive type in which Cancer's natural acerbity is modified by the influence of the moon. We must think of it as the corrosive element, as the sea which eats away at great cliffs, eternally breaking back upon itself, and eternally coming on again, wave upon wave, until it has eaten up the defiance of the cliffs. This image is very accurate in describing the method of attack of the native. He does not expect to gain his ends immediately. Rebuffs do not perturb him in the least. It is all part of the business. He is broken to pieces apparently, but he goes on exactly as if nothing had happened. The passive type of Cancer is altogether governed by the moon. It has hardly anything in common with the active type. It lives almost entirely upon reflection, like Selene herself. The conservatism is quite complete, yet there is practically no resistance to change when the impression arrives. It reflects any image with equal docility and is itself not really impressed. There is something philosophically false in saying that water takes the shape of the vessel into which it is poured. Water has no shape. The only thing it insists upon is a level surface. Just as the active type wins by subtle and persistent attack, so the passive type remains itself by virtue of resistance of the Tolstoyan kind. It resists by the simplest process of not resisting. Water can be no more compressed than steel. Its apparent docility is an illusion.
It's fascinating. I watched a guy on YouTube, and he was running water, and he used different sound measurements. Is it megahertz? Is that how it goes?
Frequencies, yeah.
Frequencies, yes. And as he had them connected to the water and would turn the frequency, the water would go in zigzags, or it would go in drops, or, you know, it would go in circles, depending on what the frequency was. And it is further just proof that if our bodies are mostly made of water, why would we not vibrate? We would, and we do. And I think that we haven't been taught about this for a reason. Because when you begin to vibrate and match your goals and what you want to do with life, or go where you want to go, or create what you want to create, whatever it is you do, and you begin to vibrate it, you surround yourself with the vibrations of what that vibration contains, you will, just like water, you'll become it. Just like when we take water and we put it in an ice cube tray and we stick it in the freezer, it's in a container and the temperature drop. We've done alchemy, absolute alchemy, and we've frozen it. It's fascinating. And you could also go into William Hoff's method here of really coldness. You know all about that, of sitting in really cold water and being in frozen waters. You know who I'm talking to? I know.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
William
I love
Hoff.
the breathing. I love the breathing method, but I wouldn't do the cold part. Fuck that.
It's rough, man. But I tell you what, there's a lot going on there.
If the breathing method actually warmed me up, maybe I would fucking try it. But when I lived when it was cold, you know, I was doing the Wim Hof every day. It was really great for, you know, feeling good, you know, mentally and feeling happy and all that. But it did not help me be warm at all.
Yeah, I got you. I have to tell you, there is huge benefit, and I don't want to go into, there's huge benefit. Just study him, check him out. William Hoff, he's on Facebook, he's all over, he's on the internet. But there's definitely a benefit to it. There's a book by...
Oh, of course there's a benefit. It is one of the top things that has helped pull me out of mental illness, the reason why I'm not on pills and shit anymore. It is up there as one of the, you know, top factors, the Wim Hof breathing method.
That's phenomenal. Well, we should definitely talk about it sometime. I'd like to hear about it. I know we've done some breath work together. That has really been helpful. Let's keep this moving. I want to mention something from Tarot of the Spirit, not going into the Tarot here, we're still on Cancer, but this is by Pamela Eakins, PhD. I highly recommend this book. If you are a serious student of the Tarot, I highly recommend this book. It is so deep. But here's what she says about water. Love, reflection, psychic upwelling, cups, mirrors, moon, west, dusk, the sacred year falling toward death, blue, green, purple, black, quartz crystals and moonstones, fish, water snakes, and dragons sloshing in the sea of renewal. The path through water. Water fills, floods, reflects, distorts, it quenches the parched throat and satiates the burning desire. Water is the primal female element yin. Yin is all receptivity. It is all that which is dark and cool and opposed to fire, which is light and hot. Water is the rain of emotions and the source of the psychic powers of divination and prophecy. It is associated with the subconscious mind. It is the element of reflection. That we often think of water as a cooling force. It actually has no temperature in and of itself. It is only affected by the application of heat and cold or of the other elements. You mentioned that, and I thought that was really neat the way that fit in. Further, water is silent. It makes no sound unless it is being pushed or pulled or impacted by another element. Water is invisible unless it is reflecting that which is around it. Its surface can be seen rippling or even cresting and breaking when it is disturbed. The natural tendency of water, however, is to heaviness, stillness, silence, clarity, and reflection of all that which surrounds it. Due to its heaviness and stillness, water is seen as the great balancer. When the emotions, the realm of self, represented by the element water, are balanced, the mundane life is fulfilling. When they are out of balance, chaos reigns. Which all ties into that Japanese gentleman, Mr. Emoto, when he froze that water to certain words and tones, they either took on beauty or chaos. And if you go and look at the words, I hate you, and what that looks like frozen versus you are beautiful, and the completely gorgeous, perfectly symmetric, uniformed, snowflake-looking water crystal versus completely distorted. And it's horrible to even look at it. You can just see there's an impact. And there's also another person who did it with rice in jars. And they put love on one jar. They cooked the rice, and then they put it in a jar and sealed it. And they put love on top, and then they did one that said hate, and then they did one that said neutral. And every day for 60 seconds, he would pick up the love jar and speak loving thoughts, and then he'd set it down. And then he'd do the hate jar, and he'd speak hate thoughts at it. And the neutral one, he just left alone. And after so much time, he opened them up, and the love one turned this beautiful, vibrant, yellowish type, and it was edible. The hate one molded and had black in it and turned. These are sealed mason jars, okay? These are words going through glass affecting the contents in it. This is vibration going through glass. This is thoughts that made the vibration. Where do those thoughts come from? And who's thinking them? If you go into the subconscious realm of water, you'll find your true psychic self, your true connection to self. You won't find that in fire. Fire is for creating, right? Fire isn't for finding. Fire is for creating, in my opinion. The finding is that stillness when we go into water. So, what else do I have? Well, I have, and I'm going to go through this quickly. Did you have anything else on astrology there with Cancer? I wanted to mention something about the sign itself.
No, that's all I had on astrology.
Okay, so Cancer is mothering, sustaining. She's the nurturing sign of the zodiac. It's the sign of the womb, the house, the home, the interior of all things, for it is the protecting or covering principle. Cancer is symbolized by the slow-moving crab, identified with its dwelling place. So Cancers always take their home with them. It's always on their back. Cancers, apparently, according to Isabel Hickey, A Cosmic Science, page 17, hate to exercise. As a consequence, in later life, they are apt to suffer from poor circulation. And again, this depends on your sign. There's just this overall generality. I love to move. I have a very active Mars, and it's in Virgo, so it really thinks about moving. And then it puts itself out on Earth and it moves. Could I do more? Definitely. But Again, it really depends on your sign. But Cancers can be lazier. They can tend to be more lazier, and they move sideways. They don't hit things directly on. When you look at the motion of a crab on the sand, it goes side to side. It kind of sizes things up.
Interesting.
It is the most subconscious of all signs, and everything is latent and hidden when we're looking at this. These make, Cancers make good doctors and nurses. I have a stellium in Cancer in my 9th house. I know you have a Cancer ascendant. So
moon in Cancer.
And you have your moon in Cancer. So, yeah, it's all over you. You definitely work with this archetype. There's no doubt about it. You should have moonstone around you. That would definitely help you. A strong stone for Cancer. Also, silver. Silver is connected with Cancer.
I've always preferred silver over gold.
Me too. It's interesting, right? I have Hecate on my Cancer sun in the same degree in Cancer. So that archetype really wants to work with Cancer themes, which in the 9th house of religion and philosophy, she just wants to communicate exactly what we're doing, and just get the word out, to start talking about higher things of the 9th house and measure them. There's a lot more there, but Cancer, I wanted to say this here, rules the public and the mass consciousness, and this is why. Because from the 4th house, you have ancestry. You came from somewhere before, your parents came from somewhere. They had a 4th house. This continual ancestry, so we've got a mass consciousness connection there with Cancer. It's very material, people on the earth, even though it's water. But mass consciousness is ruled by feeling, never by reason, she states. Propagandists and advertising agencies know this fact well and make full use of it dealing with the public. America, born on the 4th of July, is Cancer-born. At the entrance to the New York harbor stands a feminine statue that portrays the Cancer type so very well. We as a nation do have a very strong emotional response to the world's needs. There's the protective, yearning, sustaining power in Cancer that brings us into the service realms. And we need to add this to the quality, we need to add to this quality the qualities of reason and discrimination. So this is where the psychic nature comes in for a Cancer. So if you have a lot of Cancer signatures, you would definitely be psychic, more than most. In the ascendant, on the person, anyone with a Cancer ascendant, you owe it to yourself, study this archetype very deeply. Cancer sun, Cancer moon. I have Cancer sun, Cancer moon, Cancer Venus, Cancer north node, Cancer Hecate, and a couple other placements. So I know what my battle was. I had and I have Neptune on my ascendant, so I'm drowning in water here, and I had to learn how to ground myself, and that's been my battle, if you want to put it that way. But once you learn and you have the tools, it becomes easier. Anything, I guess. The
main thing I always got from the symbol of the crab is that it's hard on the outside and soft on the inside. That hard armor is completely necessary for someone with a lot of Cancer to grow. Otherwise, you're just like a fucking crab without its shell. You're just going to flop over and get crushed by everything.
Right. And it's just a really strong need to make sure everything's okay there, too, with the Cancer sign. Like, it's this innate, do you need to eat? Did you sleep well last night? And a lot of the feeling stuff. And so if you're a Capricorn, Earth, Cardinal, 10th house, opposite of 4th, that is very, very challenging to identify with. So if a Cancer is married to a Capricorn, you're opposites and don't have a lot in common, but water and shore go together. So earth and water, sea to shore kind of thing. There's something to be said about the dynamic power that takes place there. But remember, Moon is Cancer's planet, and this is the unconscious. the receptivity part of us, that which receives, that which comes in. It rules the breasts and the stomach, or even further deeper, the pancreas.
You want to know something interesting about the earth and water bit? Like physically, scientifically? Most of the life in the oceans is relatively close to the shore. Like the far out, ocean, international waters type doesn't actually have a lot of life in it. The life in the ocean depends on nutrients that run off from rain and wind from the shore.
Yes. That's incredible. I didn't know that. And that's beautiful. I'm totally drawn to the ocean as a Cancer. If anyone's a Cancer, has strong Cancer in your chart, you're going to be drawn to those waters and to the shore. When I go to my place of meditation that I do every single night, I put myself to bed this way. Every single night, I encourage you, auto-suggest, get disciplined with it. It will transform your life. And I just put myself to sleep with love. And I do not have anxiety about anything. I refuse. I go into my meditative stance. And I imagine myself sitting on the sand and my feet are in the water and the sun is, is going down, and it's a beautiful, beautiful, just incredible ocean breeze. And my hands are open, and I just go into auto-suggest, say everything is fine with me. My body is healthy. My relationships are strong. Everything's working out for me. And I do my breath, and I go into gratefulness, and before I know it, I'm asleep. What I'm saying is, as you talking about the subconscious, as you put those thoughts within your subconscious mind, which is what happens when you go into theta and your brainwaves slow down, you then can change the way that you operate, because 95% of all behavior is subconscious based. 95% of all behavior is subconscious based. Think about that. Change the tape. Change the person.
I've heard a mind-bending argument about free will and accountability based on that. Because if most, if not all of your behavior is determined by your psychology, and most people at least have no say in their psychology, their environment, then how is anyone really accountable for anything? And how does anyone ever actually have free will? Mm-hmm. But there are ways to, kind of steer your psychology, but most of it's out of your control.
Yeah, well, you're talking to somebody in advanced school working on her PhD in psychology. I couldn't disagree with you more.
Oh, of course, I believe you have strong power. Like I just told you, I used to be on pills. I used to be a mental wreck, and I pulled myself way out of that, a 180. Right. But there are certain things about my characteristics, that the things that I just have a need to know. There are a lot of things about my character that I don't control. That ways that I'm just always going to be.
Okay, and that is really speaking of your natal chart.
Yeah.
And how you're wired and how your energetic footprint came in, and how why you like vanilla over chocolate, or why this isn't who you are. I'm just saying as an example why you don't like to jog but you like to hike, or why you don't like cold but you like hot. I mean, this is all in the chart. And so if you study it and you see the areas that are challenges, you look for the helpers and you start working with those archetypes and those planets, and you'll see things change. You'll see how you can adapt and evolve and overcome things. Now, if they're like just normal day-to-day things, that's different, like your hair color, those kind of things. I'm talking about maybe things within you in your behaviors, in your drive, in the way that you see and do things that maybe you don't want to do. Or were you talking about things that, because you said you can't change them, it's the way it is. Are these good things or bad things, so to speak? Are they positive attributes, or are these negative attributes within you that you're challenged with? Like, that's what I'm asking you.
I'm not sure. I never really thought that much into what exactly is and isn't malleable about a person. Right. I didn't say I believe that idea. I just said it's a mind-bending idea, and it's an idea I've been thinking about and considering. It seems very important not to just either believe everything or discount everything, and either accept it or reject it right away. I like to play with ideas, put them on the shelf. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not. That's an interesting thought. Maybe come back to it later.
I agree with that until you learn something and you know it, and then you don't go back to that mode. You go into doing it, and that's where I'm at.
Yeah, like of course. I'm saying right away it's important not to accept or reject a lot of things.
Absolutely. That's why we say test everything we say. We're just trying to get information out and talk about the stuff we've studied. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. But that was a very, very interesting conversation. The High Priestess is the first time in the Tarot that we see any type of representation of water. Water itself is Neptune, absolutely. But we see representations of water coming out because we've got the Magician card, number 1, Major Arcana is Mercury, the rational mind. And then we have the High Priestess, the Moon card, which is the emotional and psychic and intuitive mind. And when we put the two together, that's when we can become pregnant with ideas and we become the Empress. So any thoughts on the High Priestess? Really quick here. And the Moon attached to her.
The card of the Moon. I actually have the High Priest. Well, there is actually a card called the Moon, which is attributed to Pisces, which we will get to later, and we'll talk about how the High Priestess is, the bright side, more the happier side of the Moon, and the Moon card and Pisces is the darker side, like we mentioned, to keep in mind the concept of Pisces and the abyss, and for later.
Okay, well, when I look at the High Priestess, and I step back from her, she reduces to 2. And the Moon is assigned to her. That's the planet that is assigned to her. And she is the 6th and 7th chakras. That's why. She's the subconscious, intuitive part of us.
Right.
The Moon... Yeah, go ahead.
The 6th and 7th chakra is interesting also because if you look on the position of the High Priestess on the Tree of Life, it's the path connecting Binah to Kether, which is the divine feminine to, oneness, non-duality. So it's the feminine path to the divine, where symmetrically on the opposite side of the tree is the Mage, Mercury, which is the more masculine route to the divine, as it's seen.
That is interesting. Well, she represents that spirituality, inner wisdom, receptivity, and she urges us to trust our wisdom. And there's a lot to be said about the symbology of the card. I want to just bring up the scroll that she's holding and how that does represent wisdom. And scrolls also represent protection because of what they contain. And the cross, I always found that fascinating on her chest. And I came across some descriptions, and it went like this. The cross represents the union of the spiritual and the material. The 4 points and quadrants of the cross symbolize the elements in 4 directions. It also represents protection. The triple cross, as seen in the Hierophant's hand, represents the Holy Trinity. So he's more the structured religion, Hierophant, whereas she's just the raw, subconscious, psychic wisdom that's out there that's available in connection with the Moon. Whereas the Hierophant kind of puts it in a structure. So he gets the triple cross, and she just gets the single cross. So I'm fascinated with High Priestess. I'm drawn to the Moon, and the Moon does represent her, so that's probably why the tie is in there. So Chariot, number 7, represents Cancer in the major arcana. And we've gone through 0, the Fool assigned to Uranus, and the Magician, Mercury, High Priestess, Moon, Empress, Venus. Emperor is the first zodiac sign, Aries. From Aries, which is cardinal fire, we go to Gemini, which is the second zodiac sign represented with lovers, and then we finally get to Cancer. And this is really, according to some places that I read, the first true expression of water within the tarot, before Neptune, because Cancer represents the water signature. That's why they do that. But I totally get it when you're coming from like the Tree of Life, in the older understanding of the classical planets, and plotting everything. It makes perfect sense to me. How do they address Neptune when it wasn't in existence before the 7 classical planets?
Well, what do you mean? How did they address it before they knew it existed?
How did they get it on the Tree of Life?
You mean after they know it existed?
Yeah. How did they incorporate that in?
I haven't seen a modern Golden Dawn, body say anything about it that I'm not aware, because I'm not in the Golden Dawn or anything like that. As far as my research as to attributions to the tree of Neptune and Pluto and Uranus, I've seen, all 3 of those all over, just beating, Kether, Uranus, and Doth, the remaining 3. Yeah, everyone's basically taking their own, best idea. It's not really official. It's evolving.
Right, and I think that's really awesome. That's really a good point, that it is evolving.
Right. If you remember,
yeah.
So like to our episodes on Chakma, Kether, and Doth, I put in my ideas. Remember, I said Uranus was Kether, and Neptune was Chakma, and Pluto is Doth. I think Pluto fits into Doth so clearly that there's really no debate there. But Uranus and Neptune, sometimes I wonder if we're trying to just force it in there. But on some levels, it does make sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you look at well, I don't even want to go into that because that's just going to open another can of worms. I want to talk about really quick Chariot number 7.
Oh, yeah, I have a bunch on the Chariot.
Yeah, how it reduces to a 7, and that 7 is a very mystical number.
I have a few tattooed on my arm because it's heavily associated with the Divine Feminine in the Babylon sigil.
So this is from Anthony Louis Tarot, Beyond the Basics, Gain a Deeper Understanding of the Meaning Behind the Cards, another excellent book. Listen to what he says about the number 7. The exemplary and marvelous sacred number 7. The number 7 has long been considered to have magical, spiritual, and mystical properties. The philosopher Philo of Alexandria, didn't want to come out.
Alexandria sounds prettier, though.
It's beautiful. Viewed 7 as that'd be a beautiful name for a child. Viewed 7 as an exemplary and
the way
marvelous,
you said it, though.
Number, because it neither begets nor is begotten. Say what? Philo was referring to the fact that 7 is neither the product of other single digits, nor can you divide 7 into any other single digit. I was like, what? True. The number 7 symbolism is part and parcel of human history, natural science, culture, and religion. God supposedly created the world in 7 days. In the cosmology of various major religions, including Judaism, Islam, and Hinduism, the throne of God is located at or about the 7th heaven. Once you move beyond the 7th heaven, you come face to face with the deity. Thus, 7 carries a sense of having reached an important threshold or limit and being on the verge of something greater. In Genesis, God rested on the 7th day after creating woman on the 6th. Other examples of seven's importance abound. There are 7 notes of the musical scale, 7 colors of the rainbow, 7 visible planets, 7 levels of the heavens, 7 days of the week, 7 chakras, 7 deadly sins, 7 sorrows of the Virgin Mary, 7 metals of alchemy, 7 seals of the apocalypse, and the list goes on. Historically, occultists often made correspondences among these diverse groups of 7. Timothy Bright, in a treatise of melancholy, 1586, discussed the 7 ages of man and makes the following associations. The 7 planets whereof our infancy is compared to the moon, in which we seem only to live and grow. As plants, the 2nd age to Mercury, wherein we are taught and instructed, our 3rd age to Venus, the days of love, desire, and vanity. The 4th to the Sun, the strong, flourishing, and beautiful age of man's life. The 5th to Mars, in which we seek honor and victory, and in which our thoughts travel to ambitious ends. The 6th is ascribed to Jupiter, in which we begin to take account of our times, judge of ourselves, and grow to the perfection of our understanding. The last and 7th to Saturn, wherein our days are sad and overcast, in which we find, by dear, lamentable experience, and by the loss which can never be repaired, that of all our vain passions and affections, past the sorrow only abides. With regard to astrology and tarot, the most important group of 7 consists of the 7 visible planets, wanderers in the sky against a backdrop of fixed stars: Saturn, Jupiter, Moon. These 7 planets form the basis of astrology theory until the discovery of Uranus in 1781. So the tarot itself, like you said, the classic of it, the basis of it is the 7 planets. And I think the more modern has been added by the later writers of the tarot. And Western astrology has come in, and Western tarot, so to speak, has come in as well and added these other planets. But I think that there's a place for them. Having said all that, I think that there's definitely a place for them, these other planets. So did you have anything you wanted to add on there? On that? Yes. Oh, sorry, the 2, 3, and 4 of Cups is Cancer. The Queen of Cups is Cancer. All queens are water. Important to look at the queens here in the water element compared to whatever the queen is in, whether it be Pentacles, air, swords, or fire wands.
So, the Chariot. This goes pretty deep, and there's a few different detailed parts to it. I clipped out the vital parts, so if you would like more context, go pick up Lon Milo Duquette's book, Understanding Aleister Crowley's Book of Thoth, Thoth Tarot, not Book of Thoth, whatever, same shit. So, he starts out with Crowley's quote on the Chariot. It's very small, and it's actually from a different work called General Characteristics of the Trumps as They Appear in Use. I think this might be in the Book of Thoth, or it might be separate, or sometimes might be together, whatever, it's not important. The issue of the vulture, 2 in 1 conveyed. This is the Chariot of Power. Trink, the last oracle. So, what the fuck is he talking about? There's a few different things here, so let's break it down. Lionel Duquette says, this is perhaps the most obscure of all verses in that work. It talks about 2 in 1 conveyed. The chariot, of course, conveys the charioteer who conveys the Holy Grail. Therefore, the Holy Grail must represent and contain the 2 in 1. But what is the Holy Grail, and what is the 2 in 1? Grail mythology tells us that the Holy Grail is the cup from which Christ drank at the Last Supper, and the same one that Joseph of Arimathea used to catch the blood and water that spilled from the lip-like spear wound in the side of the crucified Christ. Joseph later conveyed the Grail and spear to a magically constructed castle where the mysterious powers complicated the lives of many generations of noble knights. In one very real way, The chariot is the chapel of the Holy Grail on wheels. And just to paraphrase a couple paragraphs here for the sake of time, the issue of the vulture is that there used to be this myth of the vulture that they could reproduce without a mate. So they could put together the masculine and feminine energies within their own body to create a new life. So back to the quote. The issue of the vulture is therefore the product or child of an internal marriage of two perfectly balanced things, or two in one. For us, neither the male nor the female is a complete human unit capable of reproduction. What is absent in the male is present in the female, and vice versa. Our creation of the two in one that results in the issue of a human baby is the most natural and usually the most pleasant of all cooperative endeavors. How are the principles that affect the very human sexual act reflected on a cosmic scale, however? What would we do with the two in one, even if we knew how to create it? The answer is trink, an oracular word that comes from the story of Gargantua and Pantagruel, a mystical satire by Francois Rabelais, R-A-B-E-L-A-I-S, 1494 to 1553. In the story, one of the main characters, Panurge, interesting name, of course, seeks the answer to the question, should I marry? He and his companions eventually decide to seek the oracle of the bottle for the answer. After many adventures, they finally reach the temple of the bottle. They pass through the door, which is written, En oino aletheia, in wine lies truth. And of course, you remember to our previous podcast, we mentioned wine having other drugs and those drugs being used in divination. Anyway, where Backbook, the priestess of the temple, takes them into the presence of the holy bottle. Panurge poses his question, and the holy bottle answers by making a sharp sound like that of cracking glass. Trink, drink. Panurge interprets this as an affirmative answer and an admonition to drink deep from the wellspring of life and knowledge. As you have probably guessed, Panurge's question, should I marry, has deeper magical implications than simply questioning the wisdom or folly of matrimony. It should be of particular interest to us because we see so much marrying going on in the trumps of the Thoth Tarot. Recall that our Kabbalistic fairy tale in Chapter 10 is all about marriage, the marriage of the prince and princess, and the marriage of the supernal king and queen. Two things becoming one seems to become a formula of supreme spiritual importance in the tarot. But drink is a curious answer to the question, should I marry? Drink. Drink what? The Hebrew letter associated with the chariot is cheth, which, when spelled in full, enumerates to 418, that is through Hebrew gematria. The same number as abrahadabra, the magical word that expresses the formula of the marriage of the microcosm with the macrocosm, or the aspirant to his or her guardian angel on another level. The word, with a slight Lady Harris typo, can be seen embroidered in the canopy of the chariot. Abrahadabra is also indicative of the uniting of male and female that we see expressed in other trumps as alchemical images such as the red and white lion and the white-red eagle. The chariot represents the zodiac sign of Cancer, whose symbol is not too subtle glyph for a particular technique of tantric yoga in which male and female energies and essences are perfectly prepared, balanced, and exchanged to create the two-in-one elixir of life. The elixir is then conveyed in a particular manner to serve as a Eucharistic talisman of unlimited creative potential. In the language of thelemic imagery, the elixir is brewed in the Holy Grail by Babylon/Nuit in Binah, the queen of our Kabbalistic fairy tale, who then offers it to the beast/Hadit in Shakma, the king of our Kabbalistic fairy tale, and they both trink, and become ecstatically drunken. In doing so, they annihilate all sense of separateness, water as a universal solvent, and so on. I added that water as a universal solvent. I should have just waited in line. But yes, that was a mouthful, and I wanted to try to read that fast. But that is the deepest aspect I am aware of Cancer. It's almost hard to, this is why there's a whole separate section called general divinatory meaning, right? Because when someone asks you a random question and you pull a card, everything I just said is probably going to be irrelevant. But if you extrapolate it out to a very small level, it is relevant. If you can take that energy and distill it to the very small microcosm of which they are questioning you about, that is how the general divinatory meaning, how we get it. And in this book, for the Chariot is listed as triumph, victory, hope, memory, digestion, violence in maintaining traditional ideas, the die-hard ruthlessness, lust of destruction, obedience, faithfulness, authority, under authority. And the path that the Chariot occupies on the Tree of Life is connecting Binah to Gabora, the divine feminine, to
the universal principle of destruction.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That's the 18th path, right? It is. I've got this here. I just saw it in front of me.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Oh, you've been studying.
Well, it's part of her book. Pamela did such a wonderful job. I'm looking at the Tarot of the Spirit and the Chariot, and she has a whole section of esoteric qualities. In the essence, she sees this card, which is just so profound of what exactly I said and you've been saying. The personality is the vehicle for ascent or descent. Change perspectives for a new field of view. And that is what the sevens in general are about. When we look at any major arcana card, you want to look at all the minor arcana cards that go with it. It's really important. You'll see a bigger picture of how it plays out in the four elements through the different expressions of cups, swords, wands, and pentacles. But it's the personality is the vehicle for ascent and descent, change perspectives for a new field of view. So you have the power within yourself to move, and it's calling you to move out in the Chariot. I believe it's asking you, which is where this cardinal nature comes from. The Chariot is the vehicle of the force of spirit. A vehicle carries, conveys, or expresses. In this case, the human personality, as the Chariot, is the vehicle for expression. Remember, we're only at 7 in the major arcana, and I deliberately spoke the planets that went with the corresponding cards prior, so you could see kind of what's happening. There's a whole flow with the tarot as well, and when it brings out certain planets and astrological signatures. So there's something to be said about studying that as well. Personality and body both contain and limit the way you conceive and present yourself internally into the universe. And you talked about that as well, like there's just some ways that you are, that we are, the way we come in, the way our DNA is, what we're attached to, and then of course we talked about our upbringing. The Chariot shows you have a choice in which direction you want to move your energy. There's a power there. And it is also ending the first 7 cycle. Like it's going into 7 and then it starts a whole new cycle. That's also how the astrological wheel works. Pretty interesting, 24 hours, to a wheel. And by the time you're in the 10th house, you're 21 years old. So you finish off young and then you just start all over again. So I want to read her meditation here quick, and then let's get on to Scorpio, right? We got to get going here.
Yep.
She says this, it's just so beautiful, but if you're a Cancer, I think you're going to appreciate this. This is your card. The Chariot, fence, high intelligence in the house of influence. Charioteer, whose face I seek but cannot know, whose name I know but cannot form, descending through raining fence of blood and sea and blood, through the inner self, ignorance, power, force, and corpse to conscious mind, holding in your empty hands the amethyst gift of wisdom. I can nearly hear your call, a whisper through the veil. Charioteer speaks in tongues, awakening fields of consciousness, the preserving, protecting power of words, new words and yet unsaid, words that manifest and edge through the bony fence, encasing matters of heart, words that dart through pillars from the middle of the soul. The strength of will is measured by the will to let the force of life manifest unreined. The strength of will is hearing through the water well enough to speak the secret of the flame. I just thought she's a beautiful writer. Can't tell you about her book enough.
Very nice.
All right, Scorpio. That's fixed waters representing the 8th house. This is the death card. Reduces to a 4, number of balance and stability. Let me back up to astrology here. I don't want to get ahead of myself. We're going to Scorpio Astrology, correct?
Yes.
Let me jump to Tarot there. So Scorpio fixed water is I desire, again, 8th house themes. We're dealing with Mars traditionally as the ruler, and Pluto was added. So Mars is where
I found Pluto as exalted.
Western would put it as exalted, absolutely. The more older esoteric understanding of Scorpio is attributed to Mars. Pluto isn't even there. But
oh, yeah, I know. I was saying Mars rules, Pluto exalted.
Yes, passion, courage, competition, sports, war, stamina, independence in relationships with Mars. This is Aries planet as well, remember. First house. In a negative expression, this is where you see conflicts. Now, conflict can be positive too, but I'm talking conflict where you're so fixed in your waters, it's not a good thing. There can be a stubbornness here with fixed signs, and having Mars connected to that can really burrow in on something, so to speak, which Scorpions can be known for. Pluto brings us that death and rebirth, 8th house, sex. Pluto is considered the higher octave of Mars. Pluto is assigned to the psychological realm as well. The blocks that can prevent us, this is the 8th house, transmutation from evolutionary growth. This is the regeneration. And Scorpio is the only sign that is represented by 3 levels. The scorpion, the eagle, and the dove, which rules regenerative faculties of cells and reproductive organs.
Yes. I actually found, well, I'm going to get into with the death card, the scorpion, the snake, and the eagle.
Yes, fascinating. Can't wait. It is an introverted feminine sign, ruled from October 21st to November 21st. Keyword, I create or I desire. This is a very passionate type of water. It's represented by the hidden, stagnant marsh waters that must be cleansed by the free-flowing waters of life. Scorpio rules the generative system, the creative fount of all physical life, the sacral chakra, where our sex organs are above the root, just below the belly button and above the anus is where you would find that. Scorpio is the most mystical zodiac sign, and we know this throughout all antiquity. There's much mystery tied to Scorpio. It is the death sign and the sign in which the battle must be fought between the soul and the personality. The personality must die by the time we get to the 8th house. We're being asked to go into the 9th house. Always follow, again, just like the tarot, there's a progression here in the wheel, and it moves, and it's trying to take you somewhere. It's trying to take you to evolution and growth to get to that 12th house. So, devil or angel here, there is no in-between. This is the sign personified in the poem. The high soul seeks the highway, and the low soul seeks the low. And in between, on the misty flats, the rest drift to and fro. So, Scorpios are found on the misty flats. And this is Isabel M. Hickey, classic work on spiritual astrology. I was quoting there. So
I really like that image of stagnant water. It really helped me put a few things together because, first of all, well, stagnant as in, because Scorpio is fixed, fixed as in not moving. And when I think of stagnant water, I think of swamps, and swamps have a really strong decay energy. Things decay really fast in the swamp because of all the moisture, and decay is the transformative power of death. And we're going to get into, the death card is Scorpio's card.
Powerful. Yes. And also much lies beneath the surface, right? When you see a pond.
Oh, you don't want to go stepping in the swamp.
Yeah, man. And I have a pond where, it's just a small little wall in the pond. It's not very big at all. And I go down there and I sing over the waters and stuff, and I sing a song to the pond because I know that it's mystical down there. I'm going to sing it. It goes, Lady Wisdom from the pond, will you show me what's beyond and beneath the darkened clay? Please show me today. And I'll just kind of sing it and wait.
Very beautiful.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. That's my Lady Wisdom from the Pond song, which is going to go in a book featuring my grandson Merrick, because he's just
nice.
a rascal muffin, yeah, and he's so curious. So we'll see when that ever gets done. But let me say this really quick. 8th house is a succedent house, along with the 2nd, 5th, and 11th. I meant to mention this. These houses always concern the emotional nature and individual desires. So that's important to keep in mind when we place Scorpio. We've got that 8th house vibe of other people as well and partnership. So any planets here, look at the way you're relating with your partnerships and those energetic footprints in those planets, because this is where you can have, for instance, really quick, the girl that was with the guy that just got busted, Jeffrey Epstein, who hung himself in jail, wink, wink, I don't think he did, but he died in jail, and he was the guy accused of all the sexual crimes. His sidekick, what was her name? Giselle or...
Ghislaine Maxwell. She
has Mars and Venus. Mars pressing up against Venus in the 8th house. So her assertiveness in her... Mars is associated to the god of war Aries as well. So her aggression against the feminine Venus is so evident what she did. Same thing with Jeffrey Epstein. His Mars is up against Venus. We see these patterns. Yeah, it's fascinating. This is the kind of stuff I study charts psychologically like this. And you can see it show up within the chart. In the 8th house, when you've got stuff there could be some real issues. What did I want to say about the 8th house? Every 8th house operation is a celestial messenger in disguise and a challenge to penetrate this disguise and become the recipient of the blessing he bears. In the wake of an 8th house storm, there is always a rainbow if we but lift our eyes to perceive it, which is what the 9th house is. It's the house of God, the guru, the mystic, higher knowledge, also outside of religion knowledge, that 9th house of long-distance travel, where we have gone all across the globe and learned all the different things about God and Earth and the elements. So that's where we're going from the 8th, but you got to get through the 8th. And what happens in the 7th, you take into the 8th. So whatever you got going on in the 7th is probably going to help you understand the 8th as well. As you see, the 7th is when we're coming out, where problems happen. We're fine as long as we're all underneath 1 and 6. By ourselves, there isn't any challenge. It's when we come out into society, 7th house, that we begin to then interact with others. Then we need to get healed from that shit. And that's what the 8th house is. That's exactly what it is. It was almost like they were like, yeah, wait, when they come out of that 6th house of Virgo, man, and they start meeting people, we better have an 8th house to fix that shit up before they get to the 9th, or they'll all be Nazi warlords like Hitler.
Yeah.
Incidentally, he had a 9th house north node. He went rogue with his religion, man, his mission. It was like the religion of white Aryan race. You know, it's like, man, the dude went off the rails. All right. So you see all these things in the chart, and I'm fascinated with Scorpio. I'm a Scorpio ascendant. Cancer sun, Scorpio ascendant, Neptune on my ascendant, really into all this depth and then above, and bringing above down and having it channeled into me, inside me, to then express it out. It's like this symbiotic thing going on. So 8th house, that's all I got. I want to talk about Scorpio a little more deeper, but let's go ahead and hear from you and what you got on Scorpio.
Okay, it's a little bit more from your place in the sun. small part from the chapter on Scorpio. The willpower of the native is so strong at first sight it seems to put shame to people born under other signs, but this excessive strength easily degenerates into obstinacy. It lacks altogether the flexibility and tact of Libra. The native of Scorpio always goes directly to the point. He never compromises, he never beats about the bush, and he never gives in. In this sign, there is nothing of the judicial temperament which gives tolerance to Libra. The sign is tremendously selfish, far so more than even Capricorn. The undeveloped Scorpio native is the slave of his own will. He is absolutely bigoted and persists in his purpose even when he sees that to do so will lead assuredly to his own destruction. A scorpion ringed about with fire is said to drive its sting into its own body, and whether or not this is a fact of natural history, it is at least a very good description of the character of the native of his sign.
Boy, that's pretty rough, man. You know, she's the passionate, that's for sure.
Oh,
No
there's more to it in this chapter.
That's a little rough, man. Being a Scorpio Senate. Although
I'm sure there's more positives. It's just, you know, I tried to keep it short.
Yeah, you tried to drive right in on that jank too, man. I got what you're doing.
No, I don't got nothing against Scorpios.
Got nothing against no Scorpio.
I got something against some signs, but Scorpio's not one of them.
Well, they have a very strong reserve, and they're not easily known by people. They tend to be very, very hard to read. Their waters run deep, very, very, very deep. Much lies hidden beneath the surface of any Scorpio or Scorpio ascendant. It is the hardest, they say, ascendant to have. Not playing victim here, but I just, you know, I have Neptune there. It's been very challenging, along with some of the things that occurred in my childhood. It was really, really challenging. But I tell you what, once they can, like you just talked about, is so true. Once they can really harness the animalistic desires and use them, this is the queen of witches. You know, this is Hecate, Queen of Wands. This is an ability to be able to channel the fire that is also part of Mars in Scorpio. Because we do have Pluto to discuss, you know, the farthest planet out there, the coldest. It's so cold. It's incredibly cold. Go back to our Pluto if you want to hear. We did a whole thing on Pluto, a whole podcast. But it's so cold. That's a Scorpio. It's unmoved. They make detectives. They make really good psychologists. They're seen in those realms often, and they usually have they're usually the black sheep of the family, and they get blamed. It's just the way it is. I'm in a group for Scorpio risings, and I can't even tell you. People will talk, and it's like the same themes over and over and over again. Go into a group somewhere, whether it be Reddit or wherever you go for your ascendant, and start hanging out with those people, and you'll find that you've got these same themes that have occurred to you. There's a lot of support to be found there. Their goals, Scorpios, the way they get to the end of something is through absolute brutal honesty and truth. They cannot stand lying. They are black and white. They need to have things pure. It's very important to see that. Scorpions don't really attack unless provoked. They kind of mind their own business. Their goals are reached by service, purity, compassion, and humility. When they serve others and forget themselves, they are truly dynamic and majestic. Scorpios are not likely to have a happy marriage until they have redeemed and transformed their natures. Yet marriage and relationships are extremely important for them. Their regeneration lies in learning to be cooperative and outgoing towards others. So chances are, if you are a Scorpio ascendant, you probably had some really tough stuff going on in your life that you needed to get healed from, and then you get healed from it, and you become like Chiron, the wounded healer. You take the very things that were meant to bring you down, and you know, you're the one with the T-shirt that has the phoenix rising from the ashes. You know, you're the one going, "That's right, you can burn me down, but I will rise." And you rise, and you're very serious about it and very passionate. Your water is fixed, and you can do it. And sometimes I know I've had to learn to balance this. I've done it without regards to other people, and it's just been my way or the highway. And I'm older now, so I'm learning, you know, you need people. No man's an island. Scorpios can really turn in on themselves like Virgos. There's something there with those two signs that, you know, I know Virgo's mutable, but he's got Mercury going on, and he can really go in on himself. I think Scorpios tend to do that too. So, do you have anything else on astrology before we go to Tarot and that death card?
No.
All right, let's do it. Hop on to death, my friend, and I'll follow up after you.
Death.
There goes his bowls, man. Did you hear him? So now you know that's not me.
What?
Nothing.
I told you I was going to get water.
No. I said, I heard you hit something and that sound of bowls went off, and I said, so now you know that's not me, that's him hitting his bowls.
It's whenever I move my mic for some reason.
It's no big deal. I just want people to know it's you and not me. Hey, I misspoke, and I really apologize. And after I said it, I meant to correct myself, and I didn't. But the Queen of Wands is Mars, Aries, Queen. This is where you get the Scorpio tied to the Queen of Wands. It is Aries, fire, water, Queen, the Queen of Wands, but Mars also rules Scorpio. So you've got to bring in the Scorpio there whenever you're dealing with Queen of Wands. That's my personal belief. Okay. So I just wanted to clear that up about the Queen of Wands. She's not just Scorpio. That's a sign to death. Death. Number 13.
So, death.
Death.
Not such a bad guy.
Death.
And death, yes. We talked about the 3 different levels of Scorpio, and here we're going to get more into that. So more from Juan Milo Duquette interspersed with him quoting Crowley. So, Scorpion is found on the lower right corner of the death card and symbolizes, according to Crowley, the lowest aspect of Scorpio. The lowest is symbolized by the scorpion. This is Crowley in the Book of Thoth now, which was supposed by early observers of nature to commit suicide when finding itself ringed with fire or otherwise in a desperate situation. This represents putrefaction in its lowest form. The strain of environment has become intolerable, and the attacked element willingly subjects itself to change. The middle aspect of Scorpio, Crowley explains, is represented as a serpent, which can be seen in the lower left corner. The serpent is sacred, lord of life and death, and its method of progression suggests the rhythmical undulation of those twin phases of life, which we shall call respectively life and death. The third symbol of Scorpio is the eagle that we see in the upper left corner of the card. The eagle, as described by Crowley, is a real gas. Which what does that mean in that context? A gas? Is that an older way to say it?
That's like something I would say.
He's probably around your age. What does that mean?
He told it to me. I was born in '63. A gas, like it's just a real hoot.
No, that was Juan Milo Duquette. I don't think you're as old as Crowley. He was born in 1875 or some shit like that.
Okay, I don't know that much about him. Closing my window. Okay.
Kate, you're awesome. If you hear this when you're editing later, you're the best.
Okay, go ahead.
So please translate for us what does it mean to be a real gas?
Like a hoot. Like it was a real gas. Like it was a real fun time. Like a gas of a time.
Okay.
That's the way I see it.
So back to, this is Crowley's words now about the eagle. The highest aspect of this card is the eagle, which represents exaltation above solid matter. It was understood by the early chemists that in certain experiments, the purest, i.e. most tenuous experiments present, were given off gas or vapor. If all 3 of these aspects of putrefaction and are in turn allowed to unfold perfectly, they generate the gentle heat necessary to incubate the Orphic egg in its final stage of development. The Death card of the Thoth Tarot is the antithesis of those found in traditional pacts. This is no stiff Grim Reaper standing on the earth, indiscriminately mowing down people, young and old, humble and highborn. This Death is vivacious and flexible. He wears the crown of Osiris and dances madly on the bottom of the sea. Instead of mowing down the living, he uses his scythe to stir up bubbles of new lives from out of the seemingly dead and decaying sediment. See also, Crowley observes, the formula of continued life is death, or putrefaction. Death is thus, in truth, the original secret male creative god.
Interesting. He really takes a different spin than others, and I just don't know if I can go down some of the roads he goes.
That's why I love it, because that's how I see it 100%. Like, I don't see the death as negative. I don't see the devil as negative. And, this is the lineage of thought, that comes from, I guess. I agree with his alternate views, on, the death and devil. He gets off into, inventing a lot of his own shit, which is interesting, but less into that and more into his traditional, ideas on traditional things.
Okay, I got you. I think it's really interesting, the symbology on the Death card. It fascinates me. It's loaded with a lot of esoteric meaning. And out of the weight deck, I want to just bring some things out. I'm sorry, were you done?
Yeah, I was done.
I apologize. That was excellent. Thank you. It reduces to 4. So numerology is really big in this card because 4 signifies stability. And you see a guy reduced to bones, walking on a horse, carrying a flag, a white horse in black armor. So you've got this duality going on with the flower, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then you've got the sun rising between the 2 pillars in the back. There's a lot of imagery. You've got water flowing. You've got people who have passed away on the ground, a child and a mother passing. You've got a pope, you've seen this card, extending out, and everyone is in a phase of change. There's a whole lot going on. The towers in the back represent connection with divine and consciousness. So this is saying your conscious is passing into death, like decay has set in. And that's important. The roses represent hope. So it's actually a very positive card. And it also, roses symbolize passion, action, the masculine essence, and blood. So roses show up a lot throughout the deck. And I wanted to ask you about that. Have you seen red roses connected with masculinity anywhere in any reading or writing?
Yes, I have. I'm pretty sure I've seen the rose as a symbol for Mars.
Okay, that's where it must tie in, because I haven't, and I didn't, and I just wanted to know if, I'm sure it's accurate. I've never seen it. I've always seen it as passion. I guess it's passion, which would be Mars, and then blood, which is Mars, right? We talked about the quarter.
Yeah. And it's interesting you said the tower is in the background of the Rider-Waite, and the tower is traditionally the card of Mars.
Yeah.
And Mars rules Scorpio, of course.
Right, right. The white horses always, in a card, it's very important to look at what direction they're going, because horses represent directed movement, change, vitality, and strength. So an animal that is often domesticated, the horse symbolizes the harnessing of raw energy towards human ambitions. And what is the ambition? 8th house, Scorpio, death and regeneration. Scorpios are some of the kindest people, and they get a really bad rap. They care deeply. And what happens is, this has happened to me and my family. I will speak my truth, and I'll say it bluntly and directly. I'm not trying to be cruel, not trying to be mean. I don't have a lot of feeling. I'm like, it's like there isn't a reason to have a lot of emotion here. I'm fixed, and my energy is about it. I just want to talk about it. And it's something that is very obviously happening, and I'll just bring it out into the open, and then I'm made the bad guy. Like, I get gossiped about and talked about, and all kinds of shit have happened just because I've asked questions like, hey, I'd just like to know why you're treating us this way. You know, it's insane to me. And it's because Scorpios are so willing to speak their truths, and they're so willing to go down to the bones of something. Like when they see you, remember, this is psychic waters. Even though it's not as strong in Scorpio, it works in a different way. It works in a totally different way than it does in Cancer. This is fixed water, not cardinal. So another thing I wanted to bring up is the armor. And he is in armor, this skeleton. And it represents preparing and protection. And the person wearing the armor anticipates challenges and is willing to fight for what is important to them. And this
you just mentioned your armor.
What's that?
You just mentioned your armor. You said you're not feeling about the situation, but I think it's more accurate to say you're not feeling any more about it, because you have felt so much about it and have been so exhausted about it that, like I said with Cancer, and like the armor, you've had to put this callous armor up because you're at your wit's end, basically.
That's a really good way to look at it, and you had brought that in before, and I agree. There's a reason there's a shell there. Like turtles have a shell too. It's not all some of the negative hype it gets. It's necessary, is what you're saying.
No, of course.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would agree with that. The other thing I want to bring out was the flag that he's carrying. And do you know about that flower that's on the flag? I don't, but I know that it stands for something, the white rose that he's carrying. But
no, I don't know about it.
Pardon me. Banners or flags are always representing the announcement of something. And the arrival of something can even be non-material. So he's coming in on his horse, carrying his flag, letting him know that I am here. And in this death, you will find renewal and resurrection, because you will rise again. You will rise. I do love the death card, and when people get it, they freak out, and it's one of the most beautiful cards. Scorpio is also represented by the 4, 5, and 6 of cups, and the King of Cups. And kings are also all fire, so this is water and fire in Scorpio here. So the King of Cups is known as the Scorpio court card. Did you know that? You probably did.
King of Cups is Scorpio? No, I haven't seen anything attributed to the court cards other than the elements.
Yep. The King of Cups is the wise, emotionally mature, experienced, composed, calm, healer, counselor, father, are some of the words that fit the King of Cups. The King of Cups is, you got very emotionally mature, because you don't get to be king. That's another thing when we look at the tarot. It's like a story. It's in real life. Kings have authority. And kings, unless you're 8 years old and somebody died and it was a really long time ago and you inherit the throne, we had these young kings. They all had advisors around them. But by the time you get to a king, you've got some measure to you, is what I'm trying to say. So I really think the the kings are very important, as well as the queens in the tarot. Kind of have their own special place. But this is a very good mediator, which is why Scorpios can make really good psychic detectives, where they mediate between the psychic world. A lot of really good psychics can be Cancer or Scorpio, especially the psychic detective ones that want to go in and get called into crime scenes, which I find fascinating. They'll go in and get called, and then they end up finding the bodies of victims. It's just beautiful how they're finally realizing, we've got to tap into this. There's people like this that know things. And so you really, really see, I would say, a King of Cups right there. Just really wanting, he's wise and he's fixed in his nature, and he's going to get to the bottom of things, and that's why he rules so well. Because he doesn't allow things to not be clear, and things to be truthful, and things to be honest. So, imaginative, charming, very sexual and sensual king with Scorpio energies, because this is sacral energy dealing with passions, raw passions, where we create and we put things together. Like a man and a woman, the parts, or a man and a man, a woman and a woman. Look, I don't care what you do. It's none of my business. All right, do you have anything else, Scorpio?
Nope.
Okay, let's go to Pisces, and then we're done rocking and rolling here. Yep. This is the 12th house. Very important to notice where Pisces fits into things. The rulers are assigned are Jupiter, which goes way back, and Neptune, which is more recent. Represent Jupiter, so let's talk about that for a moment. And Jupiter is philosophy. This is where you get, by the time you get to the 12th house, Jupiter does rule the 9th house, but also is assigned to Pisces. You have this idea of, okay, what was it all about? What did I learn this incarnation, this time through the wheel, this time through this life? And, of course, if you die really, really young or as a baby, there's no chance to do all that. And I don't know how to explain why that happens. But if you go with just what I've learned and studied, astrology, the 12th house is the house where everything ends and where you reevaluate your life. So you got to bring Jupiter in here. You have this higher understanding. And also, Jupiter has done many, many travels because Jupiter likes to move out. It's expansive. So Jupiter is always benevolent. It's a connection to God, to God's wisdom, and it's very karmic. So then you have Neptune. Neptune, of course, was the hangman. I know you'll get to that again. But that's our sensitivity and our psychic and mystical capability when we get to Neptune. This is our dreams and our illusions. So we take a really strong look at, okay, really, was this life just a dream? Was this life delusion? What did I do with this life? What happened in this life? You're always on higher-minded things when you're in Pisces. It's an extremely creative sign. It's mutable water. It's able to take those emotions and paint with them and write with them. And so Pisceans are often very, very dreamy, very sensitive souls. It's just crazy to me. I've never met one or known one that's close. You can have a lot of deception here because Neptune is so far away. And it can create a type of fog if we're not careful. Any of the water houses can do that because water can be misty too and can turn into fog. And it can rain really hard and we can't see. So water comes in many forms. It isn't just like flowing rivers and oceans here. We can have waterfalls and we can have hurricanes. And Neptune is the water of the water of the water. And it rules the nervous processes within our bodies. So when we look at mental health within a natal chart, or someone that's in a transit maybe really challenged, I always look at Mercury, of course. You know, how's it doing in the natal chart and the dignities of it. And I look at the aspects and some of the other inner planets, but I always check the Neptune. It is an outer planet, like I said, so it's more collective energy than it is personal energy. But where you have it certainly impacts you. And because there's such fogginess at times with Neptune and it is so far away and distant, we can turn to other things for clarity, which is where addictions can come in. And we can turn to drugs and alcohol and whatever, you know, there's many forms of addiction. So this is something that can occur with Pisces. What would you like to share on Pisces, the astrological sign? So much.
Yes, Pisces, more of your place in the sun. Pisces is the weakest of all the signs in its reaction to material and mental affairs. Its strength lies wholly upon subtler planes, which will be discussed in the proper place. This is one of the so-called double-bodied signs in which we find so curious a division of interests. In really weak cases, this amounts to negation of any moral character. Speaking generally, the native of Pisces receives almost all impressions that may reach him. He not only reflects them like a mirror, but absorbs them like a sponge. Truth to the native of Pisces means that which he feels for the moment. All watery signs seem to have this quality to some extent when the type is a weak one. This type is so impressionable that it reacts immediately to any influence. It cannot stand alone. This sensitiveness extends to all planes. This Pisces native is singularly open to suggestion, being always very psychic. In all cases, however, we find that this extraordinary flexibility and adaptability seem to select the subtle and interior nature of the forces which are at work upon it. The developed native has an almost divine power of separating the subtle from the gross, and using only the former. Nature itself seems plastic in his hands.
So what are your thoughts on Pisces compared to Scorpio here before I dive into Pisces a little bit? How do you see them? So we've got mutable water.
Right, it is very interesting. I definitely see Pisces as a lot more passive. It definitely shares the darker, almost death-related aspects to Scorpio, but definitely doesn't seem like any of the willpower or assertiveness, and seems to be more psychic, but I'm sure, that is present in Scorpio as well.
Here's what, it's the key word there is intuition. So they're always outer and up. Do you know what I mean? They're always connected.
Primarily working in the spiritual realm.
Right, and they're very mutable, and they're water. So they can move around like two fish, and that is the symbol when we have Pisces is two fish. So Pisces are really friendly and likable. I came across in my research, and with the water being mutable, this is where moods can really come in, and they can be too introspective. So they kind of have that opposite thing that Virgo has in Earth with Mercury going in on itself. They kind of have this as well, but in more of a subtle way. They're very secretive and into mystical depths. Like most Pisceans are highly creative. That's just something, unless it's really debilitated. That's where we see most of our artists. So they may not be a Pisces sun, but they might have a Pisces ascendant or a Pisces moon, or they're Pisces sitting on an angle, or some other aspect that really just shows that creative nature that comes out. They may at times prefer their inner life to this one. So it's like they create this world within themselves. They really don't feel quite home here. Anyone who has Neptune on the ascendant will feel this way. And I have it, like I've said, and I literally, at times, and there's nothing wrong with my mind, I'm psychologically sound. Of course, everybody who's not crazy says that, but test me, that's fine. People want to test my brain, that's fine. I really know that I'm connected to something outside of this atmosphere. Intuitively to my bones of bones, and I'm not a psycho. Like, I know that I know, and often I can go into this highly creative world of imagination because of Neptune there. Anyone who has Neptune on one of the angles, you're going to be a very, very creative person, and so you have to be careful not to let that creativity just, in some of my greatest playing on my guitar, some of my greatest drumming or writing or anything is when I really just let loose and let just creativity take me instead of me trying to take it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes it's that feeling of things that just come through you. Like a lot of artists will say, like, I didn't write that. It just kind of appeared. I have felt that also.
Yes, yes. This is the most sensitive sign, I think, of the whole zodiac. So they're able to really tap into that. Just creative. It's the higher octave of Venus. So it's in what is Venus. Go back and listen to that podcast. It's all about creating. It's the Empress. In the Cosmic Science book by Isabel Hickey, she says this on Neptune. And if I ever read anything that I thought would be Piscean, this is so well put. Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. Venus is exalted in Pisces. Neptune is exalted in Cancer. That really helped me when I read Neptune was exalted in Cancer. So for all the Cancer suns out there that have Neptune in a prominent place, and I know some of you, Cancer is exalted in Neptune. So Cancer is able to really take Neptune's outer and bring it into a fourth house, motherly, highly intuitive Cancerian way. Where Venus is personal love and affection, Neptune is divine love. So again, this is that higher outside of us divinity, divine. This is where we sacrifice and where we are like Jesus, where we're compassionate. Venus says, I will love you if you will love me. Neptune says, I will love you, for it is the nature of love to love. And that is so true. Like, I will love anybody because I see your intrinsic value. I don't really care what you did. That doesn't tell me who you are. It just tells me what you think about most. But is that really who you are? I don't think so. Some people are on autopilot, just like a program. They're not awakened to their inner self. However that looks to you, there is a difference between really knowing what's going on and who you are here and how it's operating on autopilot. Neptune is the universal solvent that melts all barriers with its persuasiveness. It is a feminine vibration of great exquisiteness. Neptune rules Pisces, the sign of understanding, and the last sign of the zodiac. Divine love is the final attainment, where sacrifice is joy and suffering is lost. There is no personal self left to suffer. See, this is the house of transcendence, the 12th house. This is the house where, again, 1 through 11 are done. We've been there. We've been with other people. This is back into ourselves here and then up, connecting to all that is. Neptune is unhappy in the critical, analytical, detailed Virgo. Here is in the sign of its detriment. Virgo discriminates, weighs everything to see if it is worthwhile in an earthly sense. Neptune has no sense of its own worth, nor suffers from a lack of it. Naturally, it does not feel at home in Virgo. Neptune is exalted in Cancer. The emotional, nurturing, material side of Cancer makes Neptune feel at home in that sign. Cancer on the higher side is the cosmic mother, she who has been denied and rejected in our solar system. Yes, there is much talk of the father and the son. How would there be a father and a son without a mother? In Capricorn, Neptune is in its fall. Saturn, its ruler, the lord of the world of matter. He is big business, politics, everything that is materialism and worldly. Neptune is no part of the world. It deals with the intangible realms in the next dimension. So all my beautiful babies out there that have Neptune in the first house or on an angle, hang in there, learn about yourself. You're not going crazy. Use it, learn it, craft it, hone it, and may it be a blessing, because it's a powerful planet. You're called a Neptunian, and you can see a lot of writing on Neptunians that people have written over the years and what that means. It just answered a lot of questions for me personally when I read this portion of the book. And again, Astrology, A Cosmic Science, Isabel M. Hickey, and that was page 51. Back over to you.
So, the moon card, attributed to Pisces. So, the moon, attributed to Pisces. Very interesting card. So, I'm going to get right into a quote and elucidate a little bit afterwards. From, of course, Mila Duquette, but he starts this chapter with a small Crowley quote. In this trump, her lowest avatar, she joins the earthy sphere of Netzach with Malkuth, the moon of witchcraft and abominable deeds. She is the poison darkness, which is the condition of the rebirth of light. There is no doubt about it. This is Duquette now. This is a spooky card. It represents the light that darkness creates. It is the light that illuminates your dreams and your nightmares. We recall that the trump is attributed to the moon is Atu 2, the priestess. She is the waxing moon and represents Luna in her higher aspect, that of forming a link between the human and the divine. The path of the priestess crosses the abyss and joins Tiphereth and Kether. Atu 8, the moon, is a very different aspect of Luna, and the most cheerful thing I could say to think about it is, it will change. Now, before many of my brothers and sisters in the craft take offense, this is necessary elucidation here, let me hasten to point out that the witchcraft Crowley is referring to in the above quote is not the nature-loving and life-affirming religions of the neo-pagan movements that have proliferated around the world since his death in 1947. It is more the imagined witchcraft spawned in the tortured and obscene fantasies of the fanatic witch hunters. The moonlight of Atu 18, that is which illuminates the phantasmagoric nightmares of all of us who cannot acknowledge the dark horrors of our own fears. The moon card shows a path through and beyond this nightmare, but it is not an easy path, and the myths of all ages and cultures prove that this journey through the poison darkness, quote, is an obligatory chapter in every hero's quest. As Crowley warns, this path is guarded by taboo, T-A-B-U. She is uncleanliness and sorcery. Upon the hills are the black towers of nameless mysteries, of horror and of fear. All prejudice, all superstition, dead tradition, and ancestral loathing, all combine to darken her face before the eyes of men. It needs unconquerable courage to begin to tread this path. Continuing on a little bit, another quote from Crowley. One is reminded of the mental echo of subconscious realization of that supreme iniquity which mystics have constantly celebrated in their accounts of the dark night of the soul. But the best men, the true men, do not consider the matter in such terms at all. Whatever horrors may afflict the soul, whatever abominations may excite the loathing of the heart, whatever terrors may assail the mind, the answer is the same at every stage. How splendid is the adventure.
Yeah, and I think that...
Love the spirit of that.
Yeah, I think that there's something to be said about the way that we understand dark and the way that we understand light.
Right.
We talked about
exactly. That. It seems like, this card could have easily been called the Abyss or the Underworld. And it's also interesting that, Hecate is a moon goddess, is known to help Persephone and partakers at Eleusis across the underworld, across the abyss. Same shit. So connecting it to Pisces, that ultimate passive energy of Pisces. I can tell you, if you ever find yourself traveling through the abyss, the main key is passivity. It doesn't matter what emotions come up. It doesn't matter how uncomfortable you are, and no matter how ugly or scary thoughts and feelings, you have to just sit in it and experience it. And the more you fight it, the more it's going to be prolonged and the more miserable you're going to be. And you'd be shocked as soon as you accept it and just begin to be passive to those things that you're resisting, that it just goes away almost immediately.
We're not taught to even... This is why this is an esoteric podcast. If if you heard that and you just received it through a religious lens, you're about to lose your minds. You're about to call an exorcist here. Because you must understand that there's a reason why they made it all only light, only light, only light. There's only light. But we don't live in a world like that. We live in a world of duality, where if we don't look at the shadow self, the unconscious, 95% of our behavior, why we do what we do when we do it, our dreams and our intuitive nature here, we're going to miss out on a whole side of the human experience. That's all I have to say. And the moon is the card of darkness, illusion, and the unconscious, according to Waite. So, we know what moons are like. You can have a really bright moon. You can have no moon at all with the new moon, where everything is completely dark. Waning, waxing, gibbous, all these moons, different shapes and different sizes, all create shadows in different ways and at different times. It's quite fascinating. I want to read what the literal translation through Waite says this. Now is the time to pay attention to your intuition and dreams. So if this card comes out, this is what it means. What do your deepest feelings tell you about your current situation? All right, that's assuming you're willing to go to your deepest feelings. Or are you one of these people that immediately run from that other side of you? If you don't face these things that are dark within you and integrate them, sit with them, just like he said, sit with them, sit with these feelings that come up, sit with these energies around you that come up, you're not going to be able to do the work of transmutation, because you're going to keep rejecting it and you're going to run on triggers. And that's what subconscious behavior is. It's just patterns over and over and over that we learned, ways of responding and being. What do your deepest feelings tell you about your current situation, he asked. What are you most afraid of right now? Sometimes the most profound growth is found in facing our deepest fears. That's exactly what you just said, verbatim, just in a little bit different way, right? You may be hiding something from others or yourself. Someone may also be hiding something from you, contributing to the confusion and fear in your feelings. So if this comes up and there's a lot of court cards, and the moon's in there with the court cards, that kind of lets me know that this has to do more with people. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yes.
The moon advises us to go within to seek better understanding before taking action. Bam. There it is. Work with the new moons. We're meant to work with these energies. We're meant to hold ceremony with these energies. These energies are intimately a part of the human system and how it operates. And everything is one, and one is all, and it all works together. The moon reminds me of the fifth principle of rhythm in the Kabbalion.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Where it says, everything flows out and in, everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. If there's a light, there must be a dark. And if all you do is have this idea of just sitting in the light, you're not gonna grow. That's probably challenging to understand if you've got a religious mind, but it's true. This card also represents natural cycles, such as the cycles of the moon, cycles of menstruation, cycle of the changing of the seasons, cycles of the tides. So the moon controls all these. And the imagery is 9, reduces to 9 in numerology of the imagery on the card. And 9 is completion. And it's done in the material sense, like you've done everything you could in the material sense. And now you've got to transcend to what's 10s? Malkuth? Is that right?
Yes.
See how that works? So now we're looking back over, with the moon, it's a time of reflection, what works, what isn't. It's a time of intuitive, how are we feeling? Yeah. So that's how 9 ties into all that. And you've got the dog, which is the material world and civilization is what dogs represent. They bring us into reality, and they're companions and protectors. Especially, they protect the soul in the spirit world. No
That's
doubt.
interesting, because on the Thoth card deck version, there's Anubis on the moon card, who's jackal-headed, which is like a type of dog.
Well, and wolves
dog
are also.
Type.
This is the other animal besides the crayfish. It's a symbol of our untamed nature. So you've got the dog in the material world that can be harnessed, right? And then you've got the wolf on the other side, which is our untamed nature, and it can be mysterious and frightening to us. Wolves are also known to be lone creatures, so they represent independence and self-sufficiency. And then, what else did I want to bring out? The crayfish. Crayfishes represent cycles because they constantly renew themselves, shedding their old shell for a new one. Transmutation. Crawling up from the water, they symbolize mystery hidden beneath emotion. So I'm starting to learn about emotions on a deeper level, and emotions can really tell you a lot about yourself. That's all I'm going to say. And it's tied to that crawfish in the moon card. And that's for another time. But I thought that imagery was amazing. Sixth chakra and 7th chakra are the chakras assigned to Pisces in the moon card. So the third eye and the crown. And do you know, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Jupiter is also assigned to Pisces. And the Jupiter card in the Tarot Major Arcana is the Wheel of Fortune.
Yes, change.
Change, yep. And this is where we have taking action, movement, destiny, luck, expansion, all Jupiter concepts. And the wheel tells us change is inevitable. The wheel moves. The cycles change. And however things are right now, they're not going to stay that way forever. They're going to move. And we need to move. And we need to change. And it also is like, hey, sometimes things happen and the wheel changes and you don't have any control over your life. There are outside events that can take place. There are people who say, no, you draw every single thing that comes to you through your thoughts. I'm not ready to go there yet, but that could be true. What if I get in my car, I decide to go get an ice cream cone, and somebody hits me from the back? You know? I think all that is other energy out there in the universe hit my energy. I don't think there was anything really divine about it. I think it was just a collision of energies, because we're living all with our little energies out here in this world, and we're going to bounce into each other from time to time. Things are going to happen. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's amazing we don't crash more, really, when you think about how fast we're going when we're driving, and when someone's over in the next lane, they're really only like 3 feet from your car, and you're going like 80 miles an hour, and fuck, I wish I didn't have to drive. I think too much about it sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, maybe we'll have electric cars and we won't be driving anymore, you know? That's all that I have on Pisces, or anything at all to say.
Me too.
I am done. Okay.
Good night, guys.
Good night.